There's some news to share, some interesting thoughts. So I'm sitting down with Colin again. So Colin, thanks for joining me again.
Okay, my pleasure.
Yesterday, after the market, Voxter came out with the press release about some management changes. We have a new CFO. So let's start with that. Maybe if you can talk about what your thoughts are here.
Yeah, well, I think you know, if you listen to Gary's interviews of late, um, he made mention of the related party issues. He's made mention of the related party receivables, and you know, Angela um, comes from. I believe she has a relationship with both the Albertelli law firm and
I'm
with
pretty sure she works for both.
right. And so, why I think that's just a natural um, problem. I think, and there's also an element where I've always said with CFOs and CEOs is that a there should be um, a natural tension between the CEO and the CFO. Not animosity, not anger, not hatred, but a certain tension where the CEO in a growth company is like, oh, let's build out on this and let's build out on that and let's build out here. And the CFO is a bit like, well, we have a budget and we have to curtail that. No, we can't do that. That's not on target. And so there's should always be a sort of natural tension between the two. Um, and you need to have a certain amount of independence because of that. And so, I'm not thinking that Angela did anything poorly, but I think there's two components to it. One is the ability to have the tension between the CFO and the CEO, and then second is the perception. And I think the perception was never terrific when it came to having a CFO that had um, potentially conflicted loyalties when it comes to the law firm, and then you have this related party. So I don't think there's anything, Angela. I don't think she's not competent or not up to the job. I just think that there are some natural benefits to having a CFO that is more independent of the CEO and that is able to play more of a hard gatekeeper and have that natural tension. And I think with Robin Dyson, who has been, was the previous CFO of iLookabout in its earlier stages, and is also, a former partner, and if not a partner, maybe a a senior accountant at KPMG. I mean, she's deeply knowledgeable, very competent. And so I think it's not like we're being thrown into the fire with somebody who's barely able to hold on. I think Robin Dyson is more than up to the job. So I think writ large for shareholders, for the board, um, for everybody who's looking from the outside looking in, I think this is a really, really good move. I'm actually quite happy about it.
Gary did an interview with Midas Letter yesterday or a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to listen to it, and what did you think about it?
Well, it was funny. I was chatting uh, with someone, and she asked me about it, and I said, "What did I think of the interview?" And I said, "Well, it was one of those interviews where he said things in certain ways that whomever was looking at the interview or listening to the interview would take whatever they wanted out of that interview. If you generally had a like for or liked Voxter, you would take the positive elements out of it. If you generally disliked Voxter, you would take the negative. I think sometimes these interviews are a bit like live theater with a certain amount of improvisation in it. And sometimes it turns out really well, and sometimes it doesn't turn out super well. I don't think it was one of Gary's best interviews. I mean, Gary's done some really excellent interviews. I just don't think it was one of his strongest. And I think some of the answers were vague enough that they could have been interpreted in either way, either in the positive. And so, people really took out whatever they wanted to take out of it. So, you know, there's some crackpot idea that, when he says, "Oh, we're going to deal with the receivable," that means they're going to buy the law firm. It's like, what are you talking about? That would make no sense whatsoever on any metric. To me, dealing with the receivable means that it's going to get paid. And so that's a net positive, to my mind's eye. And so I think, and then he talked about the uplisting. He was very vague, and he sort of threw the kitchen sink at it, if you ask me, about what could potentially go along with that uplisting and so on and so forth. So, I think with, when he's on some of these interviews, he makes these statements, and he's purposely vague because it is an interview. And sometimes he puts more information out there to make it vague or to make possibilities without nailing it down, rather than saying less and being purposely vague and saying, yes, we plan on uplisting, full stop, end of discussion, rather than it could be in concert with this, or in concert with this, or it could be concurrent with this, or concurrent with this. I mean, there's, a host of different ways to answer that question. And he answered in such a way that people who like Voxer heard, "Oh, we're going to uplist." And people who don't like Voxer said, "Oh, we're going to do another acquisition." I don't think he meant to say an acquisition. He said, when he was more pointedly asked about acquisitions, he said point blank, "No, we're here to integrate and grow the current acquisition." So I would take him under face value when he was asked a direct question about acquisitions. Full stop. He said no. In light of an uplisting, he was a bit more vague and added a bit, maybe too much information. But listen, again, I don't know what he was dealing with 5 seconds before that interview. So maybe he wasn't as on point as he normally is. But, people took whatever they wanted out of that interview.
Yeah, for sure. But remember when you and I talked a while ago, and you talked about the relationships that shareholders have with big companies versus small companies, and how they're insecure. Our shareholders are insecure and want to be told that they're pretty all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're in that. We're in that phase right now. Like, it's,
Well, I think,
yeah.
yes, we're in that deeply insecure relationship that is overly codependent. It's almost codependent by its very nature. I mean, it's shareholder to owner and management, and if something gets sort of misconstrued, I think I said in that, "Oh, do you really like me? Do you really think I'm pretty?" Wait, you kind of hesitated there. At the end of the day, these interviews sometimes come across very well, and sometimes they come across a bit flat. I thought the interview was fine. I don't think, as I said before, I don't think it was his strongest interview. Sometimes when there's a lot of things moving, management has to be more vague and can be less precise. And that's, somewhat problematic, because it can be interpreted as people see, as they feel like they want to interpret it. And the CFO move, to my mind's eye, is reinforcing of the fact that the related party issues are being dealt with. Having a CFO that has a foot in two different boats is problematic if those boats are somewhat related to each other. And so I think that this move strengthens the independence and reduces the related party interconnections. And the fewer interconnections, the better, in my mind. It doesn't mean that Angela was good, bad, or indifferent. Just that there's an interconnectedness that was there, either in, I don't think in action, but at least in perception. And because of that, I think this type of move had to be done. And so I'm very happy that move was made. And I think any other types of interconnectedness has to be dealt with. It's a bad look, and it causes potential problems, and it makes shareholders in general unhappy when they see that type of thing. So I'm happy that it happened. You know, I feel for Angela. I mean, I don't know her at all, but I feel for any human that gets moved about. And you know, some people are saying some things, some people are saying other things. I think it's just an act of interconnectedness. The perceptions there. We also have the related party receivable. Combined all that together, you know, this is a good move to separate any sort of related parties and interconnectedness. I think this is the adult move to make that needs to be made. And I think it makes Voxtur stronger and better.
All right. Well, thank you for your thoughts then.
All right. Well, listen, it was good talking to you. Thanks, Maurice.